Morning, Botai, Shavua Tov. Last week we spoke about some of the halachot of cemeteries and visiting them and making brachot. There's an interesting halacha that many poskim bring down, including Maran Zechron Baruch and Chazon Ovadia Velut, with regards to visiting a cemetery on Shabbat. Many poskim say that it's asur to visit a cemetery on Shabbat, Yom Tov, Chol HaMoed. It seems that the isur is not intrinsic, nothing wrong intrinsically with visiting a cemetery on Shabbat. The issue is because of the pain, the tsa'ar, that it brings along. Therefore, it seems that if a person wants to visit a grave that's not in a cemetery, for instance, to visit the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and other tzaddikim that are buried but not in a cemetery, that should be mutar on Shabbat. Nevertheless, there's a tshuva. Agon Yitzchak Yosef, the Rishon LeZion, writes in Shelot Utshuvot HaRishon LeZion that many poskim bring that there is no benefit to visiting the graves of tzaddikim on Shabbat whatsoever. And the reason for that is because the neshama of the tzaddik is not around on Shabbat. It goes to the upper realms. It's not by the tomb, and therefore there's absolutely no benefit to visiting the tzaddik on Shabbat. So even if it's not in a cemetery, even if you want to go visit the kever of the Rambam, the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whatever it is, the halacha is, according to these poskim, the Stipler says the same thing. There's no benefit. The neshama is not there. Nevertheless, Agon Chacham Yitzchak himself writes, B'Shem Kama poskim, in the Drashot Haran, he says that there is still some benefit to praying by the kever of the tzaddik. That's because even if the neshama of the tzaddik isn't there, but the place, the resting place of the body of a tzaddik is considered a holy and pure place where there's an extra measure of kabbalat tefillah. Also, the Ran writes that since the tzaddik was merited in his lifetime to be a vessel of shefa, so that continues after his death as well. And based on that reason, it would seem that even if the neshama of the tzaddik is not around on Shabbat, nevertheless, there still is some benefit in praying at his grave on Shabbat. Therefore, La Halacha, he writes that it's preferable wherever possible, he says, to visit a cemetery on Shabbat, or even the graves of tzaddikim inside the cemetery is not recommended whatsoever. However, if a person wants to visit the graves of tzaddikim that are not inside cemeteries, or let's say the tzaddik is buried on the edge of a cemetery, meaning you don't have to enter. For instance, Maran Zechron Bracha, he's buried right at the edge. So you can visit the grave without actually entering the cemetery. He says that is mutar on Shabbat. You just have to make sure if it brings you any tzar or pain or crying, whatever it is, then it's asur lekol hadeot, and a person should try to abstain. Yom Tov, have a wonderful week.